Hey everyone, it's Types, and today I'm going over the top 10 best cards in Obsidian Flames. So one thing before this video really kicks off, Obsidian Flames is not a particularly good set. I'd say it's around the strength of Vivid Voltage, which is not a particularly good set, but there certainly were some good cards in it. And there are some solid cards in Obsidian Flames as well. Also, I have looked at all the cards, but I might do an updated one. I'm also going to talk about the set some more later because it's not like officially out. It's released in pre-releases, but it's not fully out. So I'll do like a full set review or something like that. I've talked about the set in larger portions before as well. But let's just get into the top 10. And there are a few cards that didn't quite make the list. I don't have honorable mentions put down on this, but I'll say there's the one stadium that helps out. Or there's a stadium that's like disruption based, I think. It's okay, but it's not particularly useful in the current meta we're in right now, so it's not that good. There's like a few supporters, which are kind of interesting. One disruption supporter, but again, it's just not super strong. It's certainly in contention for the top 10, but I just chose not to put it on. There's some baby Pokemon, which I just didn't think were that good. And there's a few X's that aren't on the list. And none of the X's are amazing, but a few of them are pretty solid. So number 10 here, we have Whiscash. And by the way, most of these images are from the Justin Basil website, which is a super useful website that is linked in my my About section of my YouTube channel, I believe. But so Whiscash here is an interesting Pokemon with its attack here, Rock Wildly. It's a stage 1. To reach fighting energy attaches Pokemon, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. This is a bit of a weird one, but it's actually an interesting tech in Lugia that changes it a lot because now you can pop in. It is a stage 1, but you can put this into play with relative ease and then just accelerate a bunch of reversal energies to it. And then you get to go ahead and just mill possibly 12 cards from your opponent, which is insane. This is a bit weird and it's a bit strange, but I think it's pretty strong, especially if you're playing like a colorless focus, but then you have Luxray. And reversals, you can put in a bunch of reversals, put in Whiscash. It's not like a crazy commitment Pokemon, but it is very strong. Milling 12 is just absurd. You can only really do it once, but if your opponent isn't playing carefully, you can pop this into play. You can maybe even try to do some fancy Thornton stuff. It's a bit clunky, but I think it has some potential to be a very solid Pokemon in Lugia. And maybe in the future we'll see it be good. There's a Centiskorch that was okay, but it wasn't that good. But I think Whiscash with Lugia could be something. I believe people actually play the Centiskorch with the Lugia Archeops a tiny bit in like Expander or something. But this Whiscash it's interesting. It's certainly not the strongest card in the world, but I think it's interesting, and it can be very strong if your opponent's not careful, and force them to always be kind of scared of the possibility that they could be decked out a bunch by certainly 9, if not 12 cards. Next up, by the way, reversal energy need to be down on prizes, and it's only on evolutions. Next up, we have Togekiss. Togekiss is interesting here. I think this is one that's a bit of a hot topic. There are a few that are, the set's like, it's always a little controversial where people rank these. I think Togekiss is okay. Precious Draw says once at the end of your turn, you may use this ability and you draw until you have 8 cards in your hand. This is after you attack and after you have taken your prize cards. So if you take a ton of prize cards, it won't draw as much, but it's pretty strong. Drawing till 8 is very good. We see like Barbarrel or even Beautyfly, which is draw till 5 or 6. So you draw to 3 on basics, but Togekiss here is very good because it draws till 8, but it's after you attack. So these are cards that you get to use next turn, but that's still solid. But you want to keep in mind that your opponent can like Iono you or judge you, which is pretty common. So that's the big thing holding it back. However, it does have free retreat. It has enough HP to certainly live some hits. It could definitely be worse. And its attack here is okay if you have a double turbo-based deck. It kind of preserves the energy and does some damage. So it's pretty versatile here, and also comes from a very powerful evolution line that is based around healing. So you can heal off your Pokemon when you play the Togetic and Togepi, and there's even a Togekiss which heals. It's not a ton of healing, but I think it's important to note that the line itself is pretty solid, and I think this Pokemon will end up seeing some play from time to time, but it's certainly not the most powerful either. But, it's one that I think you want to keep in the back of your mind, and it will definitely see some play, as I said, at some point, but not a ton. Next up, we have Flamigo, which this is like a picture. I think it was from like a PCG radio video or something. I don't know. I was not able to find a good English version of this card. This is the best I found. But Synchronized Feathers here is the main attack you're looking at. It's 60 for 2, colorless. If Flamigo's on your bench, it does 60 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this allows you to do a 60 to the active and 60 to the bench snipe, which is pretty good. You'd really look to do 70, but you can buff this with something like Hawlucha, Radiant Alakazam, or something like that. And so Flamigo is really interesting. The big issue is paying it, but it's not that. Like, 2 colors isn't that bad. You could use double turbo, but that will reduce the damage to the bench and the active. So that's not like an amazing idea, but Flamigo is definitely a strong Pokemon. I think it's interesting in Lost Zone. It's not amazing in Lost Zone, but it's okay. It does the same amount of damage as Sableye, but just less like versatile. It does have more HP though, and also if your opponent has something that prevents Sableye, this is good. You do need to Mirage Gate, but it's only 2. You could just Raihan to this as well early on. So I think it's an interesting card. It hits a solid amount of damage. It's in the same vein as like Cramorant or Sableye or Radiant Greninja, where it's a tiny bit awkward to pay, but it's also it's still like a basic. It hits decent numbers, essentially the same numbers as all those other Pokemon, and you need to just figure out a way to pay it, but I think it could slot nicely into that deck and could slot into other decks as well. But I think Flamigo is a really cool Pokemon, and getting the other Flamigo on your bench is not a huge deal. There's a Flamigo, the United Wings, which searches for the other Flamigos, which is okay. And then you also have you could just play like 2 of this Flamigo, which is fine. Also, Fighting Resistance is okay, but you'd rather have 10 more HP because you're still getting one-shot by Tinglu, which is a bit unfortunate. And Urshifu as well sometimes, but not by the spread attack if you're in the active, but you'd rather have 10 more HP, definitely. Next up, we have Letter of Encouragement, which is an item card, which is kind of interesting. You can only play it if one of your Pokemon was knocked out last turn, but then you get to search deck for up to 3 basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. This is amazing in Chien-Pao, which is a very solid deck right now. It's also pretty solid in Gardevoir, another very good deck right now, and it's even okay in Lost Zone. It's not amazing in Lost Zone, but you could play it because you're getting knocked out. But it's very good in Chien-Pao because you really want the energy, and it's very good in Gardevoir because you're getting knocked out, and you also want the energies. So I think it's very good in those decks and any other energy acceleration-based deck from hand or from discard pile. I think this is very solid as long as you're playing single prizers, which is most decks, or even if like most decks play some single prizers, it's okay in 2 prize decks. I think Letter of Encouragement is really good when it's usable, but obviously it's not usable all the time. But you see something like Energy Search, see play. So I like Letter of Encouragement. I think it's interesting. It also has synergy with the Galarian birds, the baby ones, which accelerate to them when you play them. So I think Letter of Encouragement's a cool card, but it's obviously situational as well. But I'm sure it's going to see play in Chien-Pao and probably Gardevoir, and might see play in some other decks as well. Some other good decks. I'm sure it'll see play in like rogue decks as well. Next, we have number 6, Scizor. This one I was really confused where to place it. So its attack here, Punishing Scissors, is pretty solid. You do 10 for 1 metal plus 50 more for each Pokemon, and your opponent hasn't played that it has an ability. So this is kind of interesting. It's pretty solid. Most decks have like a few Pokemon with an ability, so this will be hitting like 150 or something for 1, or 160 for 1 on a stage 1. But then you compare it to Flapple, and it's almost directly worse. It does more damage, and it has more HP, which seems better, but it is not a colorless energy. Flapple's a colorless energy. So that's pretty big deal. Scizor does hit weakness, but that's pretty meaningless most of the time. Sure, it does hit weakness on Gardevoir, but that doesn't really matter too much. This baby Gardevoir, not the Gardevoir EX, and it hits weakness on Chien-Pao, which is cool. That could help a little. Especially with the 10 more damage. You should be almost always one-shotting Chien-Pao versus Flapple might not, but still, like, it's not that good. So it's pretty much directly worse than Flapple, which is a big downside. Meaning that it's almost never going to see play until Flapple rotates. But Scizor in itself is a pretty solid card. We've seen similar cards like Weavile as well quite a while ago that was very good and similar. So I think Scizor will see play. I don't think it'll see play immediately, but its higher HP is actually good. In some senses, it's not lovable, searchable, but it is. It will live more hits, which is good. Also, it evolves from Scyther, which also evolves into the Cleavor, which can be good. So I think that Scizor is a very solid Pokemon. I don't know. It won't see too much play initially. But it is techable into decks as well. You could play this in Luminous Energy-based decks. This might be the piece they need, but probably not. But we'll see. I think it's an interesting Pokemon. It's honestly like solid into Lost Zone because it has more HP than Appleton, or than Flapple as well. Next up, number 5. I realized I forgot a card on this one that goes with Kingambit. But Kingambit is interesting. It's a attack here, execute. It's a stage 2 metal, although there's a Dark Kingambit, Darkness Kingambit. That's okay, but it doesn't have anything to do with this. But you have Execute. If your opponent's active, has 4 more damage counters on it, it is knocked out. So Kingambit seems good. Instantly one-shotting. This is actually the same thing, or it's slightly better than Hisuian Typhlosion's V-Star power, which is pretty good. Hisuian Typhlosion V-Star as V-Star power, which is pretty solid, but it doesn't see too much play. It's a bit awkward. However, there's a tool that's really good. That's kind of like Box of Disaster, I think. It pretty much just says if you're one-shotted, then you put 4 damage counters on the defending Pokemon. So then you one-shot them back. So Kingambit will just be like one-shotting all your opponent's Pokemon, assuming they're not playing Tool Disruption. So Tool Disruption is problematic, and it's also a stage 2. So you may be looking to play things like Hawlucha, but because it's a tool and it's a stage 2, Arven works very well with the deck, as it gets you your Rare Candy or maybe your Ultra Ball, and then also allows you to grab the whatever the card's called. It's some like Boxing Glove type card. It's very solid. I think it's one of the best stage 2s we've seen in quite a long time in terms of attacking like stage 2s. Obviously, like Excalibur and Gardevoir and even Luxray are very good, but they're not traditional stage 2s, or they're like set up and stuff like that. But Kingambit is a very traditional attacking stage 2, and I think it's pretty solid. It's just ability to one-shot anything is really good. And most decks will have a hard time dealing with it, I think. This high HP is annoying. You could even like trade decently with Lost Zone if you play double turbo energies to just do massive rend, which would do 120 for metal and double turbo. So I think it's a very solid Pokemon that I think people are overlooking, not underlooking, because it's a stage 2 and it seems kind of gimmicky, and it is, but I think it's very solid as well. Next up, we have Glimmora EX, the first of a few actually EXs. Glimmora is an interesting one. Some of you may know I don't like Avery, but Glimmora is much better than Avery, kind of. So pretty much its ability is if it's in the active, your opponent cannot have can only have 3 bench Pokemon. If they have more, they have to discard them. The issue with Avery is it just forces them to discard. Discarding their opponent's bench is not actually good. It's kind of bad because it allows you to heal them up or remove them if they're damaged, which is essentially healing. You need to get rid of them, but it gets the damage off the board, which is always good. So Glimmora does that, which isn't ideal when it goes into the active, but the idea is you get it into the active before your opponent has bench Pokemon. Now they're just kind of locked out of playing them. Say they have exactly 3 bench Pokemon in play. You're against Lugia, Archeops. They have like a Lugia, 2 Archeops, and some attacker or something. Or let's say it's crazier, even crazier than that. They have their Lugia to attack with, 2 Archeops on the bench, and then they play Lumineon. You just Glimmora them, and now they're really, really sad because they can't do much of anything now. So you Glimmora them, and they're kind of stuck. The issue is if this gets swapped out of the active, then they can get more bench space. So it's a really tricky game to play, and there's a lot of escape rope. You can get Glimmora up turn 1. There's an Ascension Glimmet, which is nice, which allows you to evolve it. Turn 1 going second using your attack. Its attack here, the Glimmora's attack itself isn't great either, but it's not awful. It's a 140 in poison. And then, of course, you can increase poison. You can do other things as well, to like ping or whatever. But Glimmora is a pretty solid Pokemon. I like it because it really hurts your opponent, but also it locks you into this similar game plan. It's very much actually like Tinglu. They stop different things. I'd say Tinglu's better than Glimmora, but Glimmora is still pretty solid, and it's techable as well in certain situations. You could even play in Zoroark-based boxes, which is interesting. Next up, number 3. I bet many of you didn't see this coming, but I think this is a very powerful Pokemon, Palafin. 150 HP is pretty solid. Then it has the big attack here. I'll talk about Jet Punch first, which isn't as good, but for 1 water, it's third to the active, third to the bench. This is not awful by any means. You will use it from time to time as it can soften things up, and just it's not awful. We've seen it on basic Pokemon, and it'd be very good. It is not as good as that because it's not on a basic, but it's still all right. And then we see Justice Kick, and then it does 210 for 2, but you have to move into the active. If you did not move from the bench to the active this turn, it does nothing. However, that's not a big deal. There aren't as many great pivots now, but there's some, and they're certainly fine. You could just do like a Mew Beach Court or something. Getting water Pokemon is very easy. You have Irida, which is just good. It will just get you whatever, like a Switch and the Palafin. The other issue here is going to be energies. We can use Raihan. You can use, there are tons of ways to get energies on. So 210 is very solid. The issue is it's a little short on some things. Usually, though, it's only 10 short. So that's really nice, meaning you can just go ahead and grab a Vitality Band, which unfortunately is not an item, which will actually hurt this deck. But because you can't switch with Irida and Mew, but you can get it with Arven or whatever. You can just draw it, and then you hit 220 for 2. which is enough to one-shot pretty much all those Pokemon you're looking to one-shot, or you could play Choice Belt or Defiance Band to also be able to one-shot more of your opponent's Pokemon. It depends on the exact circumstance, but I think with Vitality Band, Palafin actually has some very solid potential. It just hits hard, and it's good. It's pretty efficient. 210 for 2 is good. We've seen like Zacian V, Miraidon EX. Miraidon's not as good as Zacian, but just hitting these like big 200s, like the low 200 numbers, which are kind of what you're aiming to hit. Palafin's, again, a little weaker than you'd like, but still you can get it up there pretty easily. And, you know, it's a strong put. You can even put it in Zoroark if you want. We've seen Zoroark, the aces of Zoroark, be like Titan and Sterilege and even like Hisuian Arcanine, which hit like somewhere like from 160, 180 to like the 220. And they're good, and they're awkward. You have to use Reversal. You could use Reversal with Palafin if you wanted, but you don't have to. And Palafin is just very solid and way easier to do. Moving into the active, as I said, is just not much of an issue. Of course, it's not like the greatest Pokemon in the world. It will be dying pretty most of the time and stuff like that. But I think it's a very solid Pokemon that you need to be watching out for. Next, number 2. I'm sure some of you may expect that this would be a number 1. Honestly, it was a pretty much a toss-up between the top 2. But Charizard's really interesting. And this isn't like an amazing Pokemon, but it's one of the better Charizards we've seen in a little while. Charizard EX here has its Dark type, by the way, 330 HP, which is very big for a Stage 2. Yeah, I mean, it's very big for anything. And then it's also immune to bench damage because it's a Terra Pokemon. But when you evolve it, you get to search your deck for up to 3 basic Fire Energy and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. There's another Charizard that will essentially make this 6 Fire Energy. It just doubles the effect of any Fire Energy, which could be good. You don't need it, though, because 3 is already a solid chunk. Burning Darkness does 180 for 2 fire and 30 more for each prize your opponent's taking. If they've taken 5 prizes, that's going to be 230 damage, which is pretty good. It's not broken, but it's pretty strong. So or 330. Sorry, I misspoke. 330, very strong. But it will be only like 200 and something after they've taken only like a few prizes, right? So they probably won't have taken 5 prizes. They'll probably have taken let's say 4 prizes, in which case you're hitting 300. Again, very solid. But if they've taken 2 prizes, which will happen, or like 1 prize, you're not hitting that much. But you're hitting the low 200s again. That number that Palafin's hitting, but you're hitting it easier. At the same time, you are a Stage 2 multi-prizer. So it's you expect it to be stronger, right? But yeah, I think Charizard EX is potentially very strong. The issue is Fire type's not very good. It's not awful, but there aren't great fire attackers, unfortunately, right now, but Charizard is very good, and I think in the future will become a very strong Pokemon. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm really liking it. Dark-type weaknesses, or hitting dark weaknesses, good. You're also weak to Grass, which is nice, because Grass is bad. I can't remember the last time I put like a Grass Pokemon on the top 10. It may not have been that long ago, but Grass isn't a good type. It's the worst type in the game. So being weak to that's fine, and then you also hit weakness on dark weak Pokemon like UV Max, Gardevoir EX, and I guess that's about it. But those are still some very, very strong Pokemon right now. And then what can top that? Because Charizard is like not the great. It's a Stage 2. It's kind of clunky. We have another Stage 2 EX, Pidgeot EX. This is also a bit controversial in how people are rating it, as all lists are. But Pidgeot is very good in my opinion. Well, okay, it's not inherently very good, but within the meta, it's very good. 280 HP is not good. It's not that good. I believe it's the lowest we've seen a Stage 2 EX. I could be wrong about that, but it's not. Oh no, I think we saw one that was 240. But it's still not great. So maybe we didn't see one of those 240. Maybe I'm making that up, but still, it's not amazing. But we see that it has 280 HP, but it has a really powerful ability here that says once during your turn, you can search your deck for any card and then put it into your hand. You can't use multiple of this ability, but that's not a huge deal. Because let's be honest, you're probably not setting a bunch of Stage 2s up. Fierce Wind does 120 for 2 colorless and discards a Stadium in play. This is okay. You can use it for a double turbo if you want. And also is weak to Lightning resistant of Fighting, which is actually, it's fine. I'd say Fighting's a little better than Lightning, but it's not a huge deal. And both see some play. And then we see it as Free Retreat, which is also really nice. It's a nice pivot. We're talking about Palafin where you need a pivot. You could play Pidgeot EX. You probably won't. That seems a bit sketchy, but it's okay. You could do it. And then you also see that, I don't know, it's a colorless Pokemon, which is kind of interesting. You can use Sharon's Care on it if you want. And luckily, these all line up with one particular deck, and that's very strong right now. That is Arceus V-Star, possibly the best deck in the game right now, depending how you look at it and how you group decks. But Arceus V-Star is super good. Pidgeot EX is super good because Arceus V-Star's V-Star power searches for 2 of any cards. This can allow you to set up Pidgeot. And then also with Arceus decks, you're generally having cards that you can search out. You can search out cards you can search out no other way or not easily, like Special Energy or something. Pidgeot can search those out. So you can make a deck focused around where you can search anything. And you can have a wide variety of different cards versus decks that, say, play a variety of different supporters, different Pokemon. You can play a variety of everything. And you set this up pretty consistently with Arceus to Pidgeot. Keep in mind, Pidgeot will be shut off by Path to the Peak, though, which is a pretty big downside. So you need to keep that in mind. You can bump it with Fierce Winds, but let's be honest, doing 100 or 120 or whatever isn't that good. So you wanna keep that in mind, but you wanna have Pidgeot EX. You could even play this with the barrel, but again, that gets kind of sketchy. So I don't know. I think Pidgeot could be very good though. With Arceus specifically, and I think Pidgeot Arceus will be a deck that is going to be very solid with a number of techs to back it up. I've been playing a lot of Arceus. I think it's very good, but it lacks that like mid to late game engine, and you just need a little more oomph, and Pidgeot gives you exactly that. Again, I'd actually say in terms of raw like power and how good they are, I'd probably rank Charizard over Pidgeot, but because Pidgeot slots so well into a deck, and Charizard really has a very few partners at all, Pidgeot will be ahead of Charizard as the best card in the set, but really any of the cards in this list are okay. Not amazing, right? Pidgeot's not like insane. Charizard's not insane. But I think this set's cool. I'm wondering what your opinions are. As I said, I chose to leave off I left off Cleffa because, and there's like a Bonsai as well. They have 30 HP. That's not good. I also left off like a lot of the trainers I just thought weren't that good. I kind of prioritize Pokemon over trainers anyways because they're more interesting and they change the game more. The only trainer I had on here was Letter of Encouragement, which is okay, and the other ones are around that power level. Of course, I think a little weaker, but still not. They're just like whatever. So I think I don't know. I'm have mixed opinions on this set. It's not amazing, but I'm still looking forward to it, right? It's a cool set. And we have 151 coming up as well. But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, I'd love it if you subscribed. YouTube has a bug going around right now, which I've seen actually happen to a lot of channels where you're getting unsubscribed. So check if you're subscribed to this channel, if you're subscribed to other channels as well. You might be unsubscribed for whatever reason. Of course, not unsubscribing happens, but yeah, YouTube's being a bit buggy right now. So yeah. Hopefully that all gets worked out, though. But I hope you enjoyed. As always, I'm excited to see you next time.